In the year of a heavy snowfall, our family ran out of food, so I sold myself. I was sold to the wealthy Cunningham family on the west side of the city to be a scullery maid for the second young miss. The Cunninghams were kind to their servants, even giving us 200 coppers a month. For me, such a life was quite good. However, change came too quickly. In my 14th year, the head of the family was implicated in some unknown crime, and the Cunningham household was raided. Males and females aged 15 and older were thrown into death row. Daughters who had married out were exempt from the crime. The night before the raid, Mrs. Cunningham returned all the indentures and gave each servant 12 silver coins, releasing them from the household and sparing their lives. The Cunningham family had recently acquired new servants, and overnight, everyone scattered. I clutched the money I had saved over the years, preparing to return to my village, but looking at the second young miss, still innocent and bewildered at 9 years old, I couldn't help but feel soft-hearted. The Cunningham estate had been confiscated, leaving the young miss and me homeless. She couldn't use her original name, Cheongyang, anymore. I gave her a new name, Baosher, meaning precious gem. She was my sister, and my name was Chen Baoyin. The Cunninghams were imprisoned on death row. Even if I spent all my money, I might not even get to see them. I had to keep Baosher alive. To live, we needed food and shelter. I was strong and not afraid of hardship. Over the years, I had learned a few words and could do some accounting. I rented a small boat and started a business selling wine on the Grand Canal. Selling wine naturally required small dishes. In the summer and fall, I sold drunken shrimp and crabs. In winter, I made warm snacks. The first year, after deducting rent, I netted 37 taels of silver. The Cunningham affair had been a sensation, expected to be resolved swiftly, but a year passed, and there was no news. I sewed cotton clothes and pants, and took leaks in Baosher to see her father, mother, brothers, and aunts. She happily put on the new red cotton coat and pants I had sewn for her, pulling my hand and shaking it joyfully. Old Mr. Lee, the guard, wasn't as strict as he had been last year. I spent 2 taels of silver, and the jailer allowed Baosher and me to enter. The prison was dim and smelled foul. Baosher was timid, gripping my hand, her eyes darting around like a lost bunny. I patted her hand and said, "It's all right. Your older sister is here." She smiled, 2 tiny dimples appearing at the corners of her mouth. The family was confined together. I could no longer recognize Mrs. Cunningham, Mr. Cunningham, or the aunts. They were emaciated and disfigured. Only 2 of the 3 young masters were there. The eldest young master was missing. I had only seen them 3 or 4 times before, and their ages differed by only a year or 2. Now, I couldn't tell who was who. I didn't know where the missing one had gone, but at least those who remained still looked like people. The jailer opened the door, giving us half an hour. Straw was laid in the corner, which must have been where they slept daily. Baosher looked at her father, whom she dearly missed, but even her mother couldn't recognize her. Yet, her family recognized her. Seeing her hiding behind me, peeking out, Mr. Cunningham finally called out, "Cheongyang." She still remembered her name was Cheongyang. After a long look at her father, she recognized him, crying out, "Father!" Tears streamed down her pale face as she hesitated, then threw herself into his embrace. The family looked at her, crying and crying. Mr. Cunningham didn't recognize me. There were more than a dozen maids in his household. He left early and returned late every day, so he didn't have the energy to remember us. Mrs. Cunningham, barely 40, had already turned gray, looking like a 60-year-old, but she still recognized me. "You're Baoyin, aren't you?" she asked, her eyes dull and her voice strained. "Mother, she's my older sister," Baosher said, pulling my hand. "Sir, madam, forgive me," I said. This servant dared not let the second young miss use her original name, fearing the authorities might come looking one day. So I had her take my surname and gave her the name Baosher. "Baoyin, what crime have you committed?" Mr. Cunningham said. "My entire Cunningham family has been implicated, leaving only her. The incident happened so suddenly that I couldn't even find a safe place for my child. If not for you, who knows if she would still be alive and standing here. Old man, I should be thanking you." Who would have thought that a year after the Cunningham family was implicated, not even a single relative came to visit them? Only a maid from the estate. "Madam had already returned your indenture. You are no longer a maid of this household," Mr. Cunningham continued. "Why can't you be Baosher's older sister? If the Cunningham estate ever sees the light of day again, Bowing will be a young lady of my household. Mr. Cunningham's demeanor and integrity remained intact. This matter still had a chance of turning around. I felt happy for Bowser. I didn't want to be a young lady. I only wanted to return to my village to see my parents, younger brother, and sister. Continuing to be a boat girl on the Grand Canal was also very good. Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham, please don't be offended, I said. I took Bowser to the Miller family's residence that day, but we didn't see the eldest young lady. I heard she had just given birth and was in confinement. The Miller family feared disturbing her and didn't tell her the truth. The Miller's matriarch sent someone to find me, saying that for the eldest young lady's sake, I must not bring Bowser to their door again. A few days later, the Miller family moved to the east side. Even if the eldest young lady wanted to see you, with the mountains and water separating you, how could she return? There was more I didn't say. The eldest young lady had fainted twice from crying after hearing about the Cunningham family. Her husband had her carried onto a boat while she was unconscious. They were all ordinary people. At such a time, self-preservation was understandable. After a few more words, our time was up. I had to take Bowser and leave, she cried, wanting to take her family with her. It took much coaxing to get her out. Then she cried, asking why she hadn't seen her eldest brother. Legends of the eldest young master were everywhere in the mansion. Not only was he said to be as beautiful as an orchid and a jade tree, but he had also achieved top honors in all 3 imperial examinations by the age of 20, making him the most favored disciple of Senior Minister Song. The future senior minister was surely his. I didn't know about other things, but his appearance was indeed excellent. After all, his mother was a rare beauty. Such a person had disappeared, his fate unknown. Mr. Cunningham remained silent. I knew I couldn't ask further about this matter. I took Bowser home. We rented a courtyard in the East District with others. Bowser and I arrived early, occupying 2 east-facing rooms. One served as a living space, the other as a kitchen. The 3 west-facing rooms housed a family of 4. The man was a peddler who traveled the streets, and his wife stayed home with the children. The peddler's name was Mr. He was 6 feet tall with a clever tongue. Mrs. He was not talkative but very kind. She was skilled with her hands, and in her spare time, she embroidered shoes, handkerchiefs, and pouches. Mr. He would then sell them. I was good at sewing clothes and making shoes, but I knew nothing about embroidery. In my leisure time, I had Bowser learn from her. Bowser was patient and learned remarkably well. My leftover fish, meat, and shrimp went mostly into Bowser and Mrs. He's 2 children's stomachs. This day was no different from any other, except that the Grand Canal had frozen, forcing my business to a halt. Some old customers who loved my snacks asked me to make them at home and deliver them. After dinner, Bowser was already sleepy. After she fell asleep, I took out a shoe sole and started stitching it by the oil lamp. We burned firewood in the brazier. I left a crack in the large window, and before sleeping, I would extinguish the fire and air out the room before closing it. I was already 15, considered a young woman wherever I went. Earning a living on the Grand Canal wasn't as easy as I thought. There were occasional harassments, especially since I was a girl with a younger sister. However, the river had its rules. After paying protection fees, there were naturally people who looked after us. I wasn't afraid of hard work, only of trouble. When the knocking sound came, I was startled. After all, in the capital, Bowser and I relied on each other. Who would come looking for us in the dead of night? Who is it? I called out. My surname is Cunningham, the person outside said, their voice low and pleasant. Cunningham? I didn't think much about it, quickly put on my jacket, and got out of bed. The person outside slipped in through the door. I swiftly closed the door. The visitor stood with their back to me, looking at Bowser by the bed. The room was small, with only a curtain separating the bed from the main area, which served as a living room. Now that the curtain was pulled back, everything was in plain sight. They were very tall, draped in a black cloak, their hair tightly bound with a jade ribbon. I vaguely guessed who they were but dared not ask, only waiting for them to finish looking. I added firewood to the brazier and boiled a kettle of hot water, then poured them a cup of tea. The tea was what I usually served guests. It wasn't excellent but not bad either. When they pulled the curtain back and came out, the oil lamp was dim, yet I could see them clearly. Everyone in the mansion said he was as beautiful as an orchid and a jade tree. I had lived this long without knowing what that meant, but seeing him today, I understood. He resembled Mrs. Cunningham greatly. except his eyebrows were thicker and longer. He had a pair of naturally captivating peach blossom eyes, making him appear effortlessly charming even without smiling. His nose was straight, his lips not too thin, and his jawline distinct. Upon closer inspection, there was a small black mole beneath his lip, yet he exuded a cool, aloof, almost alluring demeanor. The superficial term handsome man didn't even begin to describe him. Crucially, he was also fair-skinned. He hadn't even removed his cloak. Sitting down in the chair and picking up the tea I had poured, his hands were equally beautiful. Indeed, beautiful people had no flaws. His pupils were dark, and when he looked at people, his gaze was profound and unsettling. His attire suggested he was not in distress. Beneath his cloak, his white robe was made of cloud brocade, truly an inch of brocade worth an ounce of gold. Since he wasn't in distress, why didn't he go to the other Cunningham family members? Court politics were often treacherous, so I dared not ask much, nor did I want to. I simply stood by, waiting for him to speak, neither rushed nor agitated. You have some courage, he said. No wonder you can protect Pyongyang so well. His voice was low and clear. I didn't dare look at him much, keeping my head down, not saying a word. Take this item, he said. Tomorrow, find a way to get out of the city and deliver it to the head abbot of the Golden Bell Temple. This matter is of great importance, so you must act with extreme caution. If it weren't absolutely necessary, I wouldn't have come to you. I initially didn't want to accept, but hearing the urgency and helplessness in his voice, I finally gritted my teeth and took the item. It was wrapped in cloth, shaped like a book, not very thick. It was still warm from his body when he handed it to me. Young master, please take care, I said. The Cunninghams, old and young, are still waiting for you in prison. He rose to leave. I couldn't bear it and said this on behalf of Boucher and the Cunningham family. He nodded, then suddenly smiled, a dazzling smile like the midday sun. Aren't you afraid that the Cunningham family and I are bad people? He asked. I only know that the Cunningham family treated me well, and that's enough, I replied. If not for the Cunninghams, I don't know what my life would be like now. He nodded and slipped out the door. The Golden Bell Temple wasn't usually open to the public. It only opened on the 1st and 15th days of each month. Tomorrow was neither the 1st nor the 15th. Just getting in would be a huge challenge, let alone seeing the abbot. The next morning, I entrusted Boucher to Mrs. He and went up Mount Jilung. Although called a mountain, Mount Jilung wasn't steep. I was used to physical labor, so walking a few steps was no problem. When I reached the temple gate, it was tightly shut. From inside, I heard chanting and the knocking of a wooden fish. After knocking several times, a young novice monk, who looked only 5 or 6 years old, came out. He was adorable and plump. He stood with one palm pressed against the other, facing me, and said, "Female benefactor, if you wish to offer incense or fulfill a vow, please come on the 1st or 15th. He was so cute that I couldn't help but want to pat his head, but I worried it might be taboo. I pulled 2 pine nut candies from my purse, the kind Boucher usually ate, and offered them to him. He pursed his lips, hesitating to take them. I opened his hand and placed them in his palm. I'm not here to offer incense or fulfill a vow, I said. Please tell your abbot that his daughter from his secular life has come to see him. I knew it was wrong to lie, but what else could I do? If I hadn't overheard a conversation on the boat, I would never have thought of such a method. Before becoming a monk, the abbot of the Dharma assembly was the former emperor's son. The current emperor still had to call him little royal uncle. During the chaos of King Wu's rebellion, the abbot was ordered by the emperor to arbitrate. Prince Hui kidnapped his family members, threatening their lives to make him withdraw his troops. The princess feared he would be constrained and set fire to the princely mansion with her children inside. By the time he captured the city and returned home, only more than 100 charred bodies remained. I heard that a wet nurse had escaped with the young princess, but no one knew where they had gone. They searched for several years without success. Disheartened, the abbot became a monk on Mount Jilung. If that princess were still alive, she would be 15 or 16 years old. The young novice was too young to know the abbot's past, but he went in search of him. Having dared to come, I no longer felt so afraid. As for impersonating the princess, I heard that many families had brought their children to the princely mansion to claim kinship back then. Although none were real, no one was ever beheaded. The prince was now an abbot and wouldn't commit murder. Soon, a plump monk emerged. His belly was round, his nose large, and its tip red. He had 2 fleshy cheeks that, on others, would appear stern, but on him, they only made him seem cute and friendly. He looked me up and down, then asked with a smile, "Female benefactor, how are you so sure you are my abbot's daughter?" "I'm not a mystic, so I can't be sure, but if the folk rumors are true, then everything about me matches," I replied. "As for whether it's true or not, only by meeting the abbot can we know. After all, only he truly knows if I'm his daughter. Anyway, as long as I get to see him, that's what matters." "Falsehood, when mixed with truth, can appear true," the plump monk said. He tilted his head, looking at the young novice, then squeezed the novice's cheek and reached into his hand. The novice monk, clearly still too innocent, obediently opened his hand. The plump monk, with his chubby fingers, took the remaining candy and popped it into his own mouth. Then, with his big belly, he turned and went back inside. The young novice looked stunned. Seeing his expression, I couldn't help but pat his small shoulder. "What's your name, Mingjing?" I asked. He looked disheartened, on the verge of tears. "Mingjing," I said, crouching down to comfort him. "Listen to your older sister. Every time your master falls asleep, go scratch at his door. If he steals your food, disturb his dreams. If that still doesn't work, spit twice on his food before you eat it. Let's see if he still eats it. This time, let him off easy. Next time I come, I'll definitely bring you more candy." Mingjing had probably never heard such wicked words before. For a moment, he was bewildered, only staring at me with wide, round eyes. His master returned quickly and led me inside. Mingjing followed beside me, a hesitant expression on his face. I smiled triumphantly at him, perhaps because he thought I was quite clever. The abbot of the Dharma assembly had just finished lecturing and was waiting for me under a Bodhi tree in the backyard. It was cold in winter, but this tree alone remained vibrantly green. If he weren't bald and wearing a cassock, no one would guess he was a monk. After all, he was too handsome and refined. He had been on the battlefield, yet he carried no hint of a warrior's hardened spirit. He appeared scholarly and intelligent. Even his age was hard to discern. Everyone else had withdrawn. He stood under the tree, twirling prayer beads. From afar, he looked like a painting. "This commoner has sinned. I hope the abbot will forgive me," I said, bowing deeply and confessing my lie. My deceit today was born of necessity. Perhaps he was accustomed to disappointment, for his expression remained unchanged. I took the package from my shoulder and handed it to him. He opened it, glanced inside, then closed it. "What sin have you committed?" he asked. "A young woman with courage and resourcefulness such as yours is rare. Does Rushu have any message?" His voice was clear and pleasant, unhurried, making one feel at ease. "No, not Rushu. That must have been the eldest young master's courtesy name, since he sought me out. He must truly be in trouble. If he ever needs help in the future, you can always come find me." "What is your name, and what is your profession?" he asked. "Bowing, Chen Bowing," I replied. "I am a boat girl selling wine on the Grand Canal." "Good girl, you may rise," he said. Several months had passed since that day. The river had thawed, and my business was thriving. On March 3rd, I heard that the Grand Princess was going to tour the river by boat. Bowsher insisted on seeing the boats. We had to close for a day, so I took Bowsher to see them early. The Grand Princess was the current emperor's elder sister. Her father, the former emperor, doted on her and married her into a wealthy family in the prosperous capital, even granting her the capital as her fiefdom. There were many rumors about the Grand Princess. I heard that when her consort kept an external mistress, she had him castrated. Afterward, she herself kept many handsome male companions, living a life of daily pleasure. Anyone she fancied couldn't escape her grasp. That's why it was rare to hear about handsome young men in the capital. Most were sent far away to academies to study once they reached the age for schooling. Families rarely returned home, unless they harbored ambitions of attaching themselves to her. There were many rumors about the princess, and no one knew which were true, but it was said that even the current emperor deferred to her, showcasing her immense power. We arrived early and secured the best spot on the bridge. The princess's entourage was grand indeed, with three-story painted boats in the Guanghua district alone. The Grand Princess particularly loved white gauze. We could tell by the white gauze curtains that the middle boat was definitely hers. Bowsher stared at it, chattering excitedly. Aside from the serving palace maids and eunuchs, the boat was filled with young and handsome men of all types. It seemed the rumors about the princess keeping male companions were not unfounded. However, the princess herself was not visible. As the painted boat drew closer, A gust of wind lifted the white gauze curtains. "Elder brother, it's my elder brother," Bowser cried, pointing at the boat. I was terrified and quickly covered her mouth with my hand. By the time I looked back, the lifted gauze was already falling. But some people are simply stunning. Even if you've only seen them once, you can still recognize them in a crowd of thousands. The princess was in a white gauze dress, her long legs faintly visible, the floral design on her forehead, her red eye makeup, and her slightly parted red lips were all clear, and he was beneath the princess, his chest bared. I could even clearly see his furrowed brow and trembling long eyelashes. The princess was about to touch his lips, but he turned his head away. In that instant, he opened his eyes. Our eyes met. Time seemed to stretch, yet also be incredibly brief, long enough for me to clearly see the shame and indignation in his eyes, but too short for me to find the tiny mole beside his lips. A dignified top scholar, yet forced to humble himself before the grand princess. This was probably more painful than death for him. The so-called integrity of a scholar meant he would rather break than bend. The person I saw today was completely unlike the one I met that night. He could endure such humiliation, surely because there was something more important than his own life he needed to accomplish. I believed him. Days turned into weeks, but I never forgot the moment our eyes met. Bowser was already a young woman. She had forgotten most of the words she learned in her early years. I had intended to send her to Golden Bell Temple to have the abbot teach her, but I feared that doing so might expose the eldest young master to those hiding in the shadows. If he were truly exposed, it would likely mean his death. The grand princess had established a school specifically for girls, and I enrolled Bowser there. Mrs. He's youngest daughter also attended with her. Although Bowser was a bit slow to grasp things, her memory was excellent. Whatever she learned each day, she could recite and write down perfectly when she returned home. I also learned alongside her, and gradually, I became able to read simple books. Only then did I realize the true power of reading. Books contained so many things I had never thought of or imagined before. It was truly said that within books are houses of gold, and within books are beauties like jade. In May, during the Dragon Boat Festival, I took Bowser to the prison. I brought the rice dumplings I had wrapped myself, along with food and wine. Bowser and I bought fan blades, painted fans, and brought mugwort and colorful strings. The 4 family members looked better than the last time I saw them. Mrs. Cunningham's voice no longer sounded so weak when she spoke. I heard that the 2 young masters used the ground as paper and wood as pens, studying diligently every day. Even the aunt no longer shed tears. The Cunningham family seemed to have found hope. I used mugwort to fumigate the prison cells, then hung the remaining bundle at the entrance. Bowser tied colorful strings for them and laid out the food. Before we came, I repeatedly told Bowser not to mention seeing her eldest brother that day. If others knew, his life would be in danger. She asked several times if she could tell her parents, but I shook my head each time. She understood the seriousness of the matter and never spoke of it again. It wasn't that I feared the Grand Princess knowing his identity. Since the Grand Princess kept him, she must have investigated his entire lineage. It was even more likely that she knew his background and chose to humiliate him in this way. I feared that if his parents, unaware of the situation, heard about their son's plight, they might be overcome with grief and commit suicide. He endured such hardship and sacrificed himself, surely partly to save his family's lives. If he knew his family died of grief because of him, how would he cope then? My older sister sent me to school, Bowser said, hugging her father's arm and acting spoiled. I can recite many books now. The words on this fan are also written by me. Father, look, are they well written? At this moment, she didn't seem to have any cognitive impairment. I had always felt that Bowser wasn't ill. She just thought a little less than others in some aspects and was more childlike. Her father carefully examined the fan, nodding as he looked. His beard had grown long, and he stroked it, praising her incessantly. My child is promising, he said. She can even write such good characters. It seems your second and third brothers should work harder. I liked the Cunningham family because of how Mr. Cunningham treated his children. He was stricter with his sons and gentler with his daughters, but his eyes were filled with deep love. He never showed favoritism. The children he raised were broad-minded and not stubbornly rigid. Second brother, third brother, did you hear that? Bowser said, proudly lifting her chin. If you don't work harder, I'll surpass you. This is all thanks to your older sister, her mother said, tapping her forehead. It was not easy for her to raise you and send you to school. In the future, You must remember your older sister's kindness. My older sister is naturally the best older sister in the world, Bauscher replied. And I am my older sister's most caring younger sister. Mother, look, my older sister sewed new clothes for you. The ceremonial robes are all made of fine cotton, washed and dried, then softened by hand before sewing. But now I can help my older sister sew too. Bauscher rummaged through her bag and pulled out the ceremonial robes. Xiangxiu, who was sold to the capital with me that year, was now a concubine in a wealthy household. I heard she was sending things back to her hometown, so I found her. I sent back the clothes I had sewn for my parents, younger siblings, and 32 taels of silver. A few days ago, the person returned, bringing a letter. It was written by my father, who had found someone in the city to help him. After my grandmother received the 2 taels of silver from my sale, she caused a commotion, demanding a division of the family assets. The 2 taels of silver were divided by head count. My parents only received 600 large coins. The house was built by my grandparents, so it naturally wouldn't be given to my parents. My father gritted his teeth and took my mother, younger brother, and sister into the county town. My father, being strong, worked as a porter at a grain store with my younger brother. My mother and sister laundered clothes for others. Although they didn't earn much, they managed to rent a house in the city. Now, they were doing well. With the 32 taels of silver I sent back, along with what they had saved over the years, they could return to the village, buy land, build a house, and even arrange a marriage for my younger brother. The Cunningham family was like a second life to me. If Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham hadn't mercifully released my indenture back then, who knows if I would be alive or dead now. How I treated my biological parents was how I should treat them. A set of ceremonial robes was nothing. When the Cunningham family fell on hard times, all their once close relatives and friends retreated, with no one stepping forward to help. She treats my Cunningham family with utmost sincerity, Mr. Cunningham said. If we can still survive, then in the future, let my son marry her. This was truly seeing friendship in adversity. Where else could one find such a loving and righteous woman? Mrs. Cunningham stroked my hair. At the time, I didn't know which son she meant, but I felt I was not worthy of any of them. They were all well-educated young gentlemen. If the Cunningham family were pardoned, they would naturally pursue official careers. They should marry a woman of suitable family background. How could I harbor such aspirations? Madam, you must not say such things, I said. What Bowing has done now is far less than what Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham did. If not for Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham releasing my indenture, Bowing would not know if she were alive or dead now. I do all of this out of genuine sincerity. If the young gentlemen of this family leave this door, they will surely enter officialdom in the future. How can they marry a woman from a servant background? If Madam truly wishes to thank me, please treat me the same as Bauscher. I remained kneeling. Let's see about that in the future, Mrs. Cunningham said. For now, I fear the Cunningham family might hinder your future. Enough said. Bauscher, pour some wine for your father. Later, I completely forgot about that day's events, but when they were brought up again, it was a completely different story. May was the poisonous month. At night, people didn't go out without reason. I closed the door early and coaxed Bauscher to sleep. I rummaged through my chest and counted my saved silver and copper coins again. If the Cunninghams were released, it would be best if Mr. Cunningham could resume his official position. But what if he couldn't? Where would they live when they came out? What would they eat daily? Could the 2 young masters continue their studies? What would happen to the eldest young master? I didn't dare to think about any of these things. Buying a house was definitely out of the question. I could only rent a larger one, but the silver I had wasn't even enough for rent. I needed to think of other ways to make a living. With just the income from the boat, I didn't know how many years it would take to support the 2 young masters' studies. I buried my head in my arms on the table and fell asleep. When I woke up with a start, he had arrived at some point and was sitting opposite me. My arm was numb from being pressed down, feeling like pins and needles, both painful and itchy. It took me a while to recover. Wincing, he just watched me quietly, not saying a word. He smelled of realgar wine. He was wearing only a white robe, wide and flowing sleeves, with the collar pulled open another inch, almost exposing his entire chest. His hair was disheveled, and his clothes were messy. He was probably drunk, his eyes still red at the corners, filled with a sheen of moisture. No wonder the Grand Princess wanted him. He was truly a captivating demon. I was 16, an age just right for marriage. and I had never truly encountered a man before. My first encounter was with someone as extraordinary as him. Blushing and a racing heart were natural reactions. Actually, over the years, I had developed a very thick skin. What kind of customers hadn't I encountered on the boat? Some loved to tell risque jokes, and I had gone from blushing furiously to eventually ignoring them. But facing his extremely thick skin, I was momentarily at a loss. "Young master, what brings you here tonight?" I asked, licking my lips and giving an awkward smile. "Do you still have colorful strings?" he asked, rubbing his forehead, appearing half drunk. "Tie one for me." I knew better than to reason with a drunk person, so I didn't say anything like, "Look how late it is. The Dragon Boat Festival has long passed." I found one in my sewing box. He extended his fair wrist, waiting. I tied it for him. He raised his arm, and his sleeve was too short, revealing half of his arm. On his fair, well-defined arm were shocking wounds, both new and old. The new ones were still oozing blood, while the old ones had healed into faint white scars. I gasped, covering my mouth with my hand, afraid I might scream. Seeing my reaction, he smiled indifferently. "Are you scared?" he said, then reached into his collar and tugged, causing his white shirt to gather at his waist. There wasn't a single good patch of skin on his body. My eyes widened as I looked at the various wounds on his fair body, suddenly feeling a sharp pain. At that young age, I didn't yet know what pain I was experiencing. "Do you know what I do every day?" he asked. "Do you know what a male companion is?" Every day after drinking, I kneel beneath that woman, begging for her affection, allowing her to do whatever she wants, and I no longer feel any pain. What if I'm the top scholar? What if I'm a talented scholar? I have long lost my integrity, nothing but a corpse that even I despise. If not for, he was probably truly drunk, dwelling on the fact that Boucher and I had seen him that day. Others didn't matter, but Boucher was his closest kin. She saw her older brother, whom she adored, in such a shameful state. How could he face her? I rummaged through my cabinet, found some wound medicine, and prepared a basin of warm water. His body had marks from pinching, biting, and whiplashes. Some wounds were unrecognizable. My heart pounded as I worked, but I dared not apply too much pressure, afraid of hurting him. I could only bite my lip, being as careful as possible. He wasn't as frail as he appeared. His muscles were well-defined, firm, and attractive. He was probably in pain, as his muscles were tensed. Slowly, I actually grew calm and composed. I told him about my visit to the prison today. "Young master, you must be planning something big," I said. "Since you have already protected your family's lives, I will take care of the other matters. I will surely look after them all properly. The simplest thing in this world is death, a rope, a knife, or even biting one's tongue to commit suicide. But living requires even more courage. Young master, you are upright and forthright, generous and cheerful. That is your integrity. When battered by wind and frost, you become even more resolute and imposing. Under immense pressure, making a choice is also a form of integrity. Since you have already made your choice, why do you harm yourself so? Those who know and love you will never abandon you." Perhaps this was the benefit of having read books. I could also say appropriate and practical words. He lay half reclining in the chair, eyes closed, seemingly asleep. The wounds on his abdomen were more severe than elsewhere. His waist was exceptionally slender. For some reason, I suddenly recalled what my mother had told me: a man should be strong. If his waist is too thin, he can't even hold his wife, let alone carry on the family line or support the household. Now, it seemed a bit humorous. Although his waist was thin, he seemed to possess some strength. "It's useless to apply medicine," he said, sitting upright. "They'll just break open again in a few days. It's a waste." I helped him put on his clothes. "You should protect yourself better," I said. "No matter what, you should protect yourself." "How can I protect myself?" he asked. "This is already my greatest compromise. If I am forced to grovel like others, I might as well die." He spoke defiantly. I was speechless for a moment. Yes, it sounded so easy to say, but how difficult it must be to do. How did he initially convince himself to become the Grand Princess's male companion? And how did he grit his teeth and endure until now? He would rather suffer physical pain than compromise his remaining dignity. "I'm hungry," he said. "Make me something to eat." "Isn't it too late to go back?" I asked. "Today." She permitted me to return home for a look. He replied, "Where do I have a home now? I only have one place to go." I had no vegetables at home, but there were 2 perch still living in the water jar. I caught one, cleaned it, and steamed it. He pulled up the small stool Bowser usually used for tending the fire and sat by the kitchen door, watching me cook. I heated the remaining bowl of plain porridge in a clay pot. Steamed fish was quick, and I also dished out half a plate of drunken shrimp and sliced a few pieces of cured meat to stir-fry. He wasn't picky with food. I didn't make too much of each dish, and he ate everything cleanly. As I washed the dishes, he stood by the counter, watching. He was tall, and the oil lamp cast a long shadow on the wall. "I want to start another business," I said, "when Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham are released from prison. If they can't be reinstated, I want to rent a larger courtyard. If the 2 young masters can return to their studies, they should certainly continue. Although the boat business is good, the income is truly too little. At that time, it might even be difficult to make ends meet, and I wouldn't dare to dream of anything more." I told him my thoughts. He lowered his eyes, deep shadows beneath them. "Have you considered me?" he suddenly asked. "I have thought about it," I replied. "I don't know what kind of things you are involved in, but I imagine it's inseparable from the Grand Princess. Royal affairs are inherently mysterious. Who can say what will happen then? I only hope you can escape safely. That would be the best outcome. I don't dare to think of anything more." He curved his lips, as if smiling, yet not. "What kind of business do you want to do?" he asked. This year, business was good. Besides the 32 taels I sent to my parents and the daily expenses for the prison, I still had 62 taels and 57 large copper coins left. This amount of money wasn't even enough to rent the most remote shop in the capital. I hadn't yet decided what to do. I wouldn't go out on the boat for the next few days. I would first look around and see if there were any better business opportunities. Money was a good thing. Earning money with money was naturally not difficult. But earning money from people wasn't something that could be achieved just by working hard. "I'll figure out the money situation. You absolutely must not take risks," he said. "If you had money, you would have brought it back earlier, so why wait until now? Just protect yourself." "Let me think. There's always a way." He looked at me with a half-smile. I was confused by his gaze. Frowning at him, he actually extended a fair finger and poked my forehead, nearly making me fall over backward. I clutched my reddened forehead, glaring at him irritably. He actually laughed, his lips red and teeth white, a stunningly beautiful sight. I asked Shangxiu and borrowed 120 taels of silver from her. This was all she had saved. I promised to return 132 taels to her in 6 months. When I was selling fish, I met a boatman uncle whose wife also worked as a boat girl with me. Their boat specialized in collecting pearls from the East Sea and transporting them to the capital for sale. I heard it was a very profitable business, so I asked the uncle and gave him 2 taels of silver, treating him to a meal. I entrusted Bowser to Mrs. He, and carrying over 100 taels of silver, I disguised myself as a young woman going to visit relatives and went with the boat to the East Sea. There were many other passengers on the boat who had paid for passage, men and women, old and young. I blended in with the crowd and wasn't conspicuous. The journey took over 2 months. And by the time I returned, it was early August. The hottest part of summer had passed, the sea breeze had tanned me, and Bowser had grown much taller. After repaying Shangxiu, I still had over 600 taels of silver left. Going out to sea depended on luck. If the heavens were against us and the boat capsized, lives could be lost. This was not a long-term solution. I rented a shop on East Street, with 3 rooms in the back courtyard. It was more than enough space for Bowser and me. This street had many tea houses, breakfast spots, and late-night eateries. Selling wontons here would be suitable. The shop was originally a food establishment, so it only needed the kitchen, tables, and floor to be cleaned of grease. Bowser had to go to school, so she could only help out after she finished her studies each day. I cleaned for 7 or 8 days, then whitewashed the walls and replaced the cloth curtain at the entrance with a bamboo one. I also placed a few pots of blooming chrysanthemums on the windowsill by the door. With only 4 tables, if I could fill them for all 3 meals, I could earn 3 taels of silver daily. A few days before opening, I was still worrying about the signboard. In the middle of the night, the eldest young master arrived. We hadn't seen each other for a full 3 months. He looked the same as usual, yet also subtly different. I didn't see him often, so I couldn't immediately pinpoint what was different. He was wearing a black robe with a jade green sash, which made his waist appear even more impossibly thin. "You're just a girl," How dare you secretly go out to sea? He asked. The weather at sea is unpredictable. How could you dare to go? If the boat capsized, your little life would be gone. Didn't I tell you I would find a way to get money? He frowned, looking extremely angry. I was perceptive and, seeing his anger, lowered my head, not daring to provoke him. Why aren't you speaking? He asked. Look at you now. You're already ugly, barely managing to be fair-skinned. Now, you're as black as charcoal. Who would dare marry you looking like this? Why had he resorted to personal attacks? No need for the young master to worry, I replied, feigning indifference. My father arranged a childhood engagement for me. Once the Cunningham family is safe, I will return to my hometown and marry him. Our family was so poor we couldn't even afford to eat. Where would we find an engagement? If it were true, my grandparents would have probably married me off as a child bride long ago. I clearly saw his eyebrow twitch, and his dark eyes stared at me. I didn't flinch or avoid his gaze. This was a matter of dignity. Very well, he said, since you're engaged, what do you want to do? Go ahead and mess around. Just make sure you protect your life. He threw down a piece of paper and left without another word. I was anxious and grabbed his sleeve. Aren't you going to eat? I asked. I'll cook you some seafood wontons. I guarantee they'll be so delicious you'll want to swallow your tongue. I coaxed him with a playful smile. He stood for a long time before reluctantly turning back and sitting down. How did he endure such a temper in the princess's mansion? Remembering his body covered in wounds, why would I deliberately anger him? His heart was already bitter enough. Here, he should come happily and leave happily. Don't be angry, I said. Look, the shop is about to open. I promise I won't run around recklessly again. It's just that the shop still needs a signboard. Since it's our family's business, shouldn't you contribute something? I found some ink and a brush, and then a piece of paper. Have you thought of a name? He asked, turning to me as he picked up the brush. Seafood wontons, I said. Our shop is for ordinary people. Writing it this way makes it clear. Everyone will know our wontons are fresh. He smiled, rolled up his sleeve, and with a flourish of his brush, completed the inscription in one fluid stroke. Later, I saw him in various states, but only that night. As he rolled up his sleeve and lifted his brush, his back straight, leaving a quiet silhouette in the dim light, was he truly at his most beautiful. His slender gold calligraphy penetrated the paper. This was his true self, seemingly imbued with boundless vitality, confident and perfect. Are you done staring? He asked, turning to me, his eyes shimmering with a milky way of stars. Beautiful, I said. I was mesmerized. Both the writing and the person are impossibly beautiful. He pursed his lips and smiled. Later, I learned that he was only 22 that year. He ate 2 bowls of wontons. As he left, I handed him the silver note again, telling him to return it to wherever it came from, regardless of the relationship. When money is involved, feelings become less pure. He finally took the silver note. If you were a man, he said to me, that would be incredible, but I was a girl. All I could do was this. The wonton shop's business grew better and better. I couldn't handle it alone, so I hired Mrs. He to help in the kitchen. By the end of the year, as I counted the money, I felt a sense of security. Days passed, and when I was 19, the Grand Princess returned to the capital. I heard she would be staying temporarily and probably wouldn't return for a while. The princess left, and she took him with her. Actually, he didn't come often, only once a month or every few months. When he did come, it was always in the middle of the night, just for the time it took to eat a bowl of food. We didn't exchange many words, but I yearned for him, thought of him. They say beauty brings ruin to nations, and beauty also ruins people, but the beauty himself was unaware of it. In December, the emperor made a vow. Although I didn't know what vow he made, the emperor believed in Taoism, refining elixirs daily in pursuit of immortality. Everyone knew he made a grand vow, for it was to be a general amnesty throughout the land. The Cunningham family was among those pardoned. However, Mr. Cunningham unfortunately caught a cold that year and didn't recover, passing away. I had already rented another courtyard, with 6 rooms, all neatly prepared. This year was actually very good, except that he wasn't there. Boucher was already a 14-year-old young woman, tall and elegant, truly a delicate flower. Her cognitive issues seemed to have improved. She spoke and acted clearly, only sometimes being a bit too earnest. For example, when I asked her to move back home, she adamantly refused, no matter who said what. I was already an older maiden, but she had also grown up and couldn't be exposed in the shop with me every day. She was so beautiful, staying home to cultivate her temperament and learn music, chess, calligraphy, and painting from her parents would be beneficial. When her eldest brother returned, he would surely find her a good match. I had no choice but to take her home to live in the back courtyard. I simply gave the back courtyard to Mrs. He's family, allowing them to live there for free. This way, they could watch the shop and save money, killing two birds with one stone. I was already a free woman. To put it plainly, I had long ceased to have any connection with the Cunningham family. Living with Boucher was fine, but returning to their home always felt a bit awkward. However, Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham treated me truly like their own daughter, no different from how they treated Boucher. The two young masters treated me with respect and courtesy. I gradually adapted and called them uncle and aunt. Following Boucher, I called the two young masters second brother and third brother. He had been gone for 6 months. With no word, Uncle Cunningham found a new hobby, teaching for half a day at the academy each day, and spending the other half tutoring his two nephews. He was a legitimate Jurin, provincial graduate. Boucher no longer needed to go to the academy. Every day, she stayed home with her mother, studying, practicing calligraphy, doing needlework, and also tidying the house and buying groceries. She was now proficient in everything. If I also prepared a generous dowry for her, what kind of gentleman would she not be able to find? Finding someone from a prominent family might be difficult, but finding someone from an ordinary well-to-do family would not be. I only asked for one thing, that she marry someone who loved and protected her, living a lifetime of happiness and freedom from worry. The next day, I returned home late. The atmosphere at home was low and tense. I didn't know what had happened. The family members couldn't explain it either, only saying that Uncle Cunningham went to the private school that morning and, upon returning, locked himself in his room and hadn't come out since. He hadn't eaten anything the entire day. I vaguely understood that he knew about the eldest young master's situation. It was bound to happen, just a matter of sooner or later. I cooked the wontons I brought back from the shop and let the others eat first. Then I carried a bowl to him. The east-facing room had been converted into a study. He was inside. I called out several times before he finally responded. I pushed the door open. The study was unlit. The moonlight streaming through the window only cast a silhouette. I placed the tray on the table and found a fire starter to light the lamp. In just one day, Uncle Cunningham seemed to have aged greatly. His already gray hair appeared even whiter. He was hunched over, unable to straighten his back. "Uncle, have you heard about the eldest young master?" I asked, placing the bowl in front of him and handing him chopsticks. His hands trembled so much he couldn't hold them. "Uncle, do you think he has disgraced the family name? Or do you feel sorry that he has suffered so much?" I asked. "It's all my fault. I harmed him." Uncle Cunningham's old tears streamed down his face. He pitied his child's reputation. "Uncle, if you pity him, then don't say anything about harming him," I said. "His heart is already bitter enough. He kept it from you because he was afraid that one day you would find out and blame him, resent him, or feel guilty and sad. He endured such hardship and gritted his teeth, so we should continue as we always have. We should live our lives well. Since we are a family, how can we calculate so many debts? You should treat him no differently than usual. That way, he won't feel awkward or distressed." I found a handkerchief and wiped his tears. "But with such a reputation, how will he marry and have children in the future?" he asked. "Uncle, he is a very, very good young master," I said. "There will naturally be a better wife waiting for him. You don't need to worry, just eat your fill, regain your strength, and wait to hold a chubby grandson. He is as good as the bright moon in the sky, with even tiny stars sparkling in his eyes. There are naturally discerning good wives in this world. He has also suffered too much. Heaven will eventually repay him and give him a wife who loves him, protects him, and is devoted to him." In July, I left the shop to Mrs. He and Aunt Cunningham and rode with Shonshow's carriage back to my hometown. I left home at 12, and now 7 years had passed. I didn't know if I had changed or if my home had changed. Each year, I sent money back. My family bought 40 acres of paddy fields and built a large tile-roofed house. My sister was married, and my brother had taken a wife. My grandparents had passed away long ago. My 3 idle uncles had all married, and their lives were reasonably comfortable. My hometown was too unfamiliar to me, and I felt estranged from my family. My brother's wife was a clever woman, but overly so. She constantly inquired about my monthly earnings and how much my dress cost to sew. I was impatient to talk to her much and just gritted my teeth and endured it. In her words, I was also a concubine. My father had been a grand old master for 2 years, never once asking if his daughter was doing well. He only said, "Keep the mistress happy, serve the master well. If you get any money, remember to send more back home." He still needed money to marry off his little grandson. My sister burst into tears of poverty when she saw me. My father had used money to marry off my 3 uncles but wouldn't even spare 12 taels for her. It seemed that 12 taels of silver were like stones by the roadside, readily available. Money was a good thing, yet not so good. It was too bright, inadvertently illuminating the twists and turns in people's hearts. My mother had passed away years ago, but no one had told me. In her cabinet were 2 pairs of shoes she had made for me. One pair was red. She said she was rushing to make them for my wedding, and she also wanted to make me a red jacket. The person who loved me had left too soon. No one could explain clearly how she died, whether they were unwilling or dared not say. It no longer mattered. The person was gone. What good was clarifying it now? I only stayed for 3 days, leaving 12 taels of silver. Seeing their eyes filled with disappointment, I left without looking back. I had no home, no lingering attachments. Only when I knelt before my mother's grave did I dare to cry. I knew only my mother would understand the difficulties of my journey. In early August, I returned to the capital. The chrysanthemums in the capital had bloomed, radiant and glorious. As soon as I opened the door, there was hot food waiting. Someone was waiting for me to come home. Even the quilt smelled of sunshine. It seemed I hadn't come to this world for nothing. "Mother, look, there are people who care for me," I said. "I'm doing very well. If you can truly know this, then rest in peace. In your next life, be a bird or a squid. You can fly as far as you want, swim as wide as you want. If you must be a human, and if I can marry a good man, then come and be my child. I will surely give you everything you desire, love you, cherish you, and make you the happiest and most fortunate child in this world." Autumn faded into winter. A heavy snow fell in Hunan, reportedly freezing countless livestock and people to death. The emperor, instead of finding ways to provide disaster relief, held Taoist rituals. Every time had its opportune moment. On New Year's Eve, the Grand Princess rebelled. Her reason was that the emperor was a muddle-headed ruler, unfit to be emperor. She wanted to emulate her mother, becoming an empress herself. She beheaded her own younger brother and died in her chambers the next day. Court officials, led by Senior Minister Song, unanimously supported the crown prince's ascension to the throne. Within a few days, the emperor during the great celebration had changed. The common people didn't care who was emperor. As long as they could live good lives, they would recognize even a 3-year-old child on the throne. The crown prince was indeed quite different from his father, who died tragically. Within a few days, he had arranged disaster relief properly. Everyone in the court praised the emperor's wisdom. The displaced people outside the capital disappeared within a day. I heard that those who wanted to return home were sent back, and those who didn't were settled locally, given land, and even helped to build houses. I didn't understand the rest, but judging by this efficiency, the new emperor was certainly not a simple person. In April, the spring breeze was just right, neither cold nor hot. I was collecting delivered fish and shrimp at the back door when Boucher ran in excitedly. I asked her what was wrong, but she only cried, stuttering and unable to speak clearly. I thought something had happened at home and pulled her, running back, but when we reached the doorstep, a crowd of people was gathered, watching the commotion. A carriage was parked outside, and several tall horses were tied to the old pear tree. After much effort, we finally squeezed inside. As soon as we entered the courtyard, I saw everyone gathered there. The house was small, too narrow to accommodate these dozen or so people in any of the rooms. We could only move chairs into the courtyard to talk. In the center sat a man with a pale, beardless face and gray hair. He appeared much older than my uncle. He wore a gray cloth robe. I knew he must be from the palace, an inner court official, since he was dressed in ordinary clothes. He surely didn't want to attract attention. I pulled Boucher over to bow. "Greetings, grandfather," I said. "Our humble abode is small. I apologize for the inconvenience." He was very kind, not at all harsh or sharp-voiced like characters in storybooks. He personally helped me up. I was puzzled but turned to help him sit back down. "Are you Bowing, the girl?" he asked. He actually knew my name, but at my age, being called girl was no longer quite fitting. "Yes, I am Chen Bowing," I replied. "I heard your seafood wontons are superb," he said. "May this old man have a taste today?" He even knew about my seafood wontons. I guessed he must know the eldest young master. The seafood collected this morning is still at the shop, I said. Second brother, please go to the shop and get it. Also, ask Mrs. He to cut 3 pounds of pork tenderloin. Third brother, come with me, we'll tidy up the main room. It wasn't proper to have guests sit in the courtyard, especially given his status. The main room was more spacious. Uncle and aunt usually lived there. The outside was for guests, separated by a screen from the bed inside. Moving the screen from Boucher's and my room and tidying up a bit would make it suitable for a meal. The remaining dozen or so guards were arranged in the second and eldest brother's rooms. Boucher followed behind me, wiping tears. After she stopped crying, I asked her what was wrong. She said that grandfather had just told them they would be moving to the capital in a few days. Her eldest brother was having the house prepared. Sister, are you going? She asked. I knew this day would come sooner or later, so I gently stroked her soft hair. Sister is already quite old, I said. These past few years, I haven't married because I was looking after you. Now that your eldest brother is taking you to live with them, you should go happily. Sister is going to marry Doggy from the village. When sister is married, if you want to come back and live with me, you can. How far is the capital from here? Is this worth crying about? I needed dough while coaxing her. If there really was a Doggy from the village, that would be great. At least I could still marry. Then her heart would be free of wild thoughts. Such thoughts were naturally wishful thinking. Sister is lying. When did Doggy from the village appear? She said. My mother clearly told you that my eldest brother would marry you. If eldest brother marries you, you will be my eldest sister-in-law, and you will come back to the capital with us. Only then did I realize her name was actually Winston.